Here we are getting off the beaten path for another adventure, and what a great way to start the day. We're looking here at Lake Hume, just outside Albury. The sun's just starting to come up, and you can see the mist rising off the water with the hills behind. Just a great part of the world. Love living here, love getting out and exploring it, and love sharing it with you guys. So we've just pulled up at Staceys Bridge in the Nariel Valley. We're heading south into the Alpine National Park and Kosciuszko National Park. The plan today is to head up to Mt Sassafrass, then across to Mt Gibbo, hopefully Pinnabar, and then out through Tom Grogan. We've just had a week of solid rain, so it's really going to depend on what the conditions are like. So we've aired down on the front to 23 psi and on the back to 25 psi. Just for now, we'll see how that goes. Looking forward to a good day out on the tracks. So we've left Staceys Bridge. The bitumen pretty much ends right there, and we're heading south on the Benambra-Corryong Road into the Victorian High Country. This is a gravel road, and as you can see there from the vision through the GoPro, it's been fairly recently graded. It's generally in good condition, although between grades it does get a little potholed from time to time. Our starting point here is about 10-12 k's in, and we're turning left, as you can see right now, onto the Wild Boar Track, which takes us up to Mt Sassafrass. It's about a 6k run or so up to Mt Sassafrass from here, and the track starts off pretty easy. You can see from the evidence there are those ruts that are starting to form. It has been soft, but even though, as I said in the intro there, we'd had a week of solid rain leading up to this trip, the base was still really firm. You know, there's plenty of evidence, as you can see, that it had been soft, but it wasn't actually too soft. There was a good firm base under everything as we're driving. You know, the great thing about this trip is these tracks are all really accessible. If you've got a four-wheel drive with low range and some decent tyres, there's no reason you couldn't tackle this this exact trip. While there were a few challenges, you certainly had the option to drive around those if you so desired. So, and certainly in this first half, there weren't any challenges, as you'll see, but really scenic country. Some of the best views, in my opinion, of the high country from the track. There's some great mountaintop views that I've shared so far already and will continue to share, but in terms of views from the track, this is as good as anywhere, including iconic tracks like Blue Rag. So we're making our way up. There's a series of rises. You basically follow the ridge line. So in some sections, this track is a lot like Blue Rag in that you're working your way up a ridge line. You can see a little bit of water sitting on the track there in places, but we certainly weren't at risk of getting stuck at any time. There are some there is some reasonably steep sections, but nothing overly steep, and generally speaking it's more of a really long steady climb on this track where you work your way up over time than any really steep gnarly stuff. So and again, while it's gravel, maybe because it had been wetted down over the previous week, the track was generally really stable and pretty easy to drive on. So with this video too, guys, I'd really love it if you could give me some comments down below. Had my wife Sharon with me on this trip, so just the two of us, and she went to a lot of effort to get out and take some external footage of the vehicle like you're seeing now. So if that's something you guys would like to see more of, put a comment down below and let me know. Obviously it takes a lot more time and a lot more effort. Like, I've done this trip before, and filming this probably added about 3 hours to the time taken to actually do the trip. As you can see, the pads there making short work of those climbs up the hill, nice and steady. A fair bit of rock, but generally just really solid under the tyres. And as you can see, plenty of spots like this where you've got views just across the roof of the high country in this area. Just spectacular. So just for reference, this this trip was actually done in November, so before summer properly starts. So I should say the tail end of spring, so a lot of growth around. Not as deep as we thought it might have been, but still fun. Who doesn't like driving their 4B through the odd puddle? And as you can see, this track's really up on a ridge line. It does fall away, not incredibly steeply, but falls away from both sides. So you've got really good views. We're heading largely north on this section, so great views out to the east, to the right there, and out to the west, to the left. And absolute cracking day, as you can see, blue skies and sunshine. And I think because of the week of rain that we'd had, this is probably the first time I've been out on some pretty popular tracks in the high country, and we did not see another vehicle all day. Not even once. We didn't hear anyone, we didn't see anyone. And this was on a weekend, it wasn't a weekday. So that was pretty amazing. But it did allow us to take our time and get plenty of good footage and just enjoy the trip. Pretty sure that that hill up ahead there that you can see is Mt Sassafrass when we get to it. So as you can see, you sort of go from hilltop to hilltop, and each one seems to be a little taller than the one before it, and you sort of dip through a valley in between the hilltops before making your way up the next one. As you can see, we are in a part of the high country that was affected by the bushfires and is still recovering. If you can hear that, I've no idea what that audio is coming through the GoPro footage. Really, no idea. I will try and edit that out, but in case it comes through, yeah, I've got no idea what that sound is. So this is probably one of the steeper climbs as we're approaching Mt Sassafrass. I'm pretty sure this is the final climb up to Mt Sassafrass. It's still not a really steep, gnarly climb. It's just steeper than the climbs preceding it, but because you got no risk of losing traction, the car just does its work, and it's not a challenging climb really at all, but you know, just enjoying the views. And as you'll see when we get to it, we're not too far from it now. When you get to the Mt Sassafrass Trig point, the track's on the turn off. It's just slightly off this main track, and the turn off is very easy to miss if you haven't been there before, or you're not following your progress with a GPS mapping tool or something like that. You could easily drive past it and wonder where the trig point actually is. As it was, I was following on the GPS map, and I've been there before and still almost missed it. I think footage like this you could show to just about anyone who four-wheel drives, and they'd instantly recognise, oh, that's probably the high country in Victoria. Certainly known for these ridgeline tracks that follow the mountain ranges along and have have a drop off either side, which make for great viewing from the vehicle. Looks like I might have been mistaken earlier. This should be the last climb up to Mt Sassafrass summit, just up ahead here. This trip we broke into it can really be broken into a couple of key sections, and video wise we'll probably do this in two parts. So this section will probably stop at Mt Gibbo, and then the second section will be from Mt Gibbo to Mt Pinnabar, and then Tom Grogan and back onto the bitumen from there. But in terms of scenery what you see, I think you got one distinct sort of outlook and scenery up to Mt Sassafrass. And then the section where you work your way through the valleys after coming down from the Wild Boar Range and Mt Sassafrass, that's very different as you work through there and up to Mt Gibbo, and then Gibbo to Pinnabar's is sort of its own sort of scenery, and then as you're working down the eastern side from Mt Pinnabar down the Mt Pinnabar track into Tom Grogan, again that's a little different again. So there's the turn-off track right there on the left, which yeah, you could easily drive past because as you can see most of the track's actually grassed in. It just looks like a little bit of gravel on the side, but that is the access up to the Mt Sassafrass Trig point. So I'm not sure it gets heaps of traffic, given that the grass is all still growing there. And exactly like it says on the screen, we're at 1,587 metres. So a nice little climb and a great place to stop and have a break. For those of you that watch the channel, you will have seen the Drifter Kitchen before, so if you have, great. If you haven't, feel free to check out the video on the Drifter Kitchen install. A little bit lazy here, I'm not bothering to set up that support leg because I'm not putting much weight on it. Hey everyone, well here we are on Mt Sassafrass, first stop on today's trip. Got the kitchen out, got the kettle on, about to make some coffee. We're at about 1,550 metres here at the Trig point at Mt Sassafrass. It's been a pretty good drive up so far. The track actually hasn't been as wet as you might expect. So yeah, most of you will have seen the Drifter Kitchen on the walkthrough video on the channel, and if you haven't, check that out if you want to know more about this setup and how it works. So having a great day so far guys, and really enjoying the trip. Thanks. So heading off from Mt Sassafrass, it's a pretty steady descent all the way down, where you seem to work your way up and down on the way there from the Benambra Omeo Road. It's a very different sort of feeling. It's a Benambra Corryong Road, I should say. It's a very different feeling as you're coming down off the range. It just seems to be descent after descent after descent. There's not too much up in this first section, and some of these descents are reasonably steep. The sections in between do flatten out a little bit. Again, at this altitude you can see the snow gums there, and the typical look and feel that you see in many places of the high country, and in this particular location evidence of the bushfires that went through a couple of years ago. The vegetation up this high isn't recovering quite as quickly as it has at the lower altitudes, and as you can see there, a little bit rocky, just working our way down, but you know, nothing overly difficult. So as I was just saying, it's a fairly steady descent down, certainly in this initial section, working your way off the Wild Boar Range down into the valley. But still some cracking views to be had as we work through that. I really hope these videos are inspiring some of you to get out there and have a crack for yourself. If you're not confident to go solo, find a friend, take them along. That's always a good idea. I do end up doing a lot of my trips solo, just because friends aren't always available on the weekends when I want to get out there. But it's always great to have other people along if you can organise that. That one was probably the deepest puddle we've driven through so far, but again, nothing overly deep or too challenging. And as I said, this was after a week of rain, so I doubt you'd, unless you also headed up here after a week of rain, I doubt you'd see quite so much water sitting around. As I said, some of these descents here are fairly steep. Keep in mind the camera always flattens things out, and they look less steep than they actually are, but you know, if you've got low range and a bit of engine braking and you don't let the car get too fast, it's nothing to be concerned about at all. Working our way down here a little further into the valley, as you can see the track getting down off the ridges and starting to work its way around the sides of the valley. This is a very different outlook to the ridgeline tracks, and not without a few hairpins, as you can see. Being down in the valley here, it was a little more comfortable to drive, not as much direct sun, and as I said, really scenic, and yeah, just still amazes me the constant reminders of the big bushfires from, you know, now 2 years ago. Bush is certainly recovering, but it takes time. Prior to the bushfires, that being said, shots like this probably wouldn't have been possible. You just wouldn't have had the vision across through like that. The trees would have had too much foliage on them. So that's one thing I do find all the time driving up in the high country now, where the bushfires have been. Even today, with the foliage recovering, you still see a lot more and a lot further than you could on tracks previously. This particular section here, the track was starting to change a little bit from a primarily sort of gravel rocky track to a little bit more of a sandy clay base, and again there was some evidence there that it had been a little soft previously, but for us on this particular day there wasn't really any concern at all. You can see somebody's chewed it up a little bit there, probably coming up. No doubt you get a fair amount of erosion on some of these tracks as well when it does rain.
So from Mt Sassafrass we head along the Wild Boar Range and then turned off onto what is that connecting track called? I'm not actually sure of the name of that track, but it turns off the Mt Sassafrass Wild Boar Track and we head through the valley and then past the Paddy Joy Track, which I think you will see coming up. So yeah, again, plenty of evidence there of just how wet and soft it has been. Getting down a bit lower here, starting to see the tree ferns that you do see fairly prolifically throughout the high country. And it's just a very different feeling, a very different scenery to being on the spur track on the ridge lines up near Mt Sassafrass. So that's one of the things I really enjoy about this trip, is that it is so different as you work your way through it. And as I keep saying, it's a very accessible trip and track that just about anyone with a low range four-wheel drive and some decent tyres would be capable of tackling. As you can see, some evidence there of some recent tree falls. Fortunately, somebody else had been along before us and cleared that. And this section again has a bit of a clay base and definitely evidence that it's been soft. And some people have had to work a lot harder than us to get up this track, but it had dried out enough for us to pretty easily and comfortably make our way up the track. Come through the valley, just starting to climb back up the other side now. A little bit looser and rockier climb than some of the early ones. It's probably a little more challenging than the section back near Mt Sassafrass, but still not what you'd call difficult. You could choose just about any line you want and your vehicle's going to climb up there for you, just as long as you take it slow and steady. There's a bit of logging activity over towards Mt Gibbo, so some of the tracks over that way are logging tracks. Making our way up the far side of that valley, getting a little closer. Bit of a miss there on the edit, so I usually try and cut any of the footage with the vehicle stopped out of it. The fuzzy gum trees there recovering still. Now I'm pretty sure this sign that you can see coming up here with a track coming off on the left is the Paddy Joy track. That's the one. So from here we actually keep going on this track. We run down to the straight running creek track, and then from there down to Pheasant Creek track or Biamba Log Road slash Mt Gibbo track. So there's an intersection when we get down there that you'll see that has a number of roads, tracks coming in and out of it. And as we get closer to Mt Gibbo, the tracks get rockier and rockier. And again, there's some really good steady long climbs and a couple of steeper sections, but generally there's a lot of these really long steady climbs where you just under load climbing up the hill. As you can see, this one just keeps going and going. And much like the earlier section near Mt Sassafrass, you sort of work your way up, you get the odd flat spot, like the one you're seeing now, and we're getting up to just about being in the clouds at this point. So as they move through, the sky's sort of cloudy or foggy looking, and then it opens back up again. Even being up in the clouds here, we still manage to enjoy some really good views. Fairly sure that that tall mountain that you were looking at there in the distance was in fact Mt Gibbo. Again, a little bit of water laying around, but nice firm base, so no concerns driving through that. Really, with this kind of terrain, I've found it's nice steady throttle control is your best friend. Again, I'm pretty sure that's actually Mt Gibbo there in the distance. We're working our way towards. And this is the mountain before the mountain. So just another good example of those really long steady climbs. Bit of a descent here before climbing up that next hill. And this is just one of several along this section of track. As you can see there in the long shot where you've got the Pajero in frame at that distance, for scale you sort of get some sense of just how big these hills are. And again you get some sense of how steep the track is, but you can see the angle of the roof rack there, and more of the roof rack that's tilted back towards the camera, basically the steeper it's getting. And as you can see there, long way to go still up that hill. Great having these long shots from the Sony camcorder that we use. Does a really good job, great optical zoom. And in case you're wondering, yes, I did go back and pick the camera person up, didn't leave them there to walk, it's a long way. That's what takes time to bring this sort of footage to you guys. Setting up the camera, going doing the drive, and then either going back and getting the camera or person filming. So it does add to it. It's so worth it. So here we are. We're
couple of hours in, and behind me there is the main climb up Mt Gibbo. So we're approaching from the west, yeah, it's a good steady climb. So far the track condition's been really good. As I said back at Staceys Bridge, we weren't too sure. There's been the odd puddle, but generally the track's been pretty dry, pretty stable. Traction's been good, and it's been a really good day wheeling so far. So looking forward to tackling the big climb and getting to the top of Mt Gibbo. See you there.
So once again, it's the climb before the climb. So there's this smaller hill in front of Mt Gibbo. Oh no, actually we've just started this part way up, so this is the actual Mt Gibbo climb. So again, this approach on the western side of Mt Gibbo is much like all the other long hill sections that we've shot along this trip. It's long, steady. It's a little bit rockier. You can see there's some decent sized rocks scattered on the track that you want to watch out for and make sure you got the clearance to drive over or avoid. But yeah, generally traction was pretty good. You can see the odd section like this is a bit broken up with some small rock steps. But nothing any four-wheel drive wouldn't handle. So this is a view from the GoPro. Some idea of what it looks like from the driver's seat heading up towards the Mt Gibbo summit. Again, clearly the bushfires actually came through here, which is amazing when you consider how high Mt Gibbo is. It's just over 1,750 metres in height. And much like that earlier section, there's the odd rock here and there. Some of the sections are a little loose. There's some steps where you drive up over the rocks, but good throttle control, choose a sensible line, and it's nothing too difficult. The odd obstacle like that rock there sitting up that you don't want to ping your sump on. Out of the whole drive from back at the Benambra-Corryong Road, Mt Sassafrass, all the way up to Mt Gibbo here, this last section is the most difficult section, and when I say most difficult, it's still not very difficult. Good bit of fun, but nothing that you're going to be too worried about, breaking parts of your vehicle on or something. It's nothing like this external footage either to show you just how often the IFS Pajeros and presumably other IFS vehicles actually lift wheels just because of the lack of down travel. Probably don't always appreciate just how much the traction control system is helping you out and keeping you going forwards, and how often you're doing that on just three wheels. So I didn't have the rear diff lock in for any of this. It certainly wasn't needed. Getting closer to the top, so as you can see, like this was just a steady climb, just wending its way up the Mt Gibbo hill to the top of the mountain. Basically, it doesn't go backwards and forwards; it just sort of curves around. And none of these sections are super steep, just nice and steady. It's good too. Had absolutely zero issues with transmission or engine temp on this trip, so which was really good. It's probably been about 6-8 months since I took it to Natrad and got the radiator clean done, which made a huge difference. And the final approach here up to the summit. I look like I'm in a hurry, don't I? So that cairn there, there's not actually a trig point on Mt Gibbo, but that cairn there marks the summit, and there is a wooden sign that isn't really very well affixed anymore. It's damaged in the bushfires, but as you can see on the screen there, 1,757 metres is the Mt Gibbo summit. And again, some of the best views to be had anywhere in the high country at this location. You can just see right across the roof of the high country. Again, we had a fantastic day for this, which we're very grateful for and thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I said earlier, amazingly did not see a single soul. Part 2, descending Mt Gibbo. That was a little more interesting, but there is a bypass track if you don't want to take on this rock step. And from there, Pinnabar, and then on to Tumgrogan with a river crossing that, yeah, looked scary and got confirmed. That's one of the approach tracks up to Pinnabar there, nice and steep. So look, thanks everybody for watching. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate all the new subscribers that have joined the channel in the last couple of months, and leave a comment down below. Love reading what you guys think, even if it's to tell me where I've made a mistake in one of the videos. So yeah, thanks everybody, and see you in the next one.